Hi, I'm your host, Marlo Lemon, and you're listening to Wild Voice, the podcast where I take this voice of mine and share my wild journey with you. Being widowed at 34 with a 15-month-old, most would see as life ending. And instead, I alchemized it and put life back together, and it became more beautiful and fulfilling than I could have ever imagined. Through this life shift of mine, I realized who I am and what I'm here to do. I'm an intuitive energy healer, and sharing how I view the world is how I help you upgrade your life and alchemize your journey into magic. From day one, I wanted to share my journey, call it intuition, but I knew it was going to do more good out in the world than keeping it to myself. So when I say I've mastered life, that doesn't mean I'm perfect or that life is. I mean, I've mastered the concept of life, and I want to share that with you. Hello, everyone. So today's episode is with my mentor and teacher, and someone I feel is like an older brother to me, Alessandro Giannetti. He's the founder and CEO of Guided Light Healing, which is the school I'm trained with and a teacher for. What is Guided Light Healing? I'm glad you asked. It's a leading edge healing school for the masses, facilitating one of the most powerful high-frequency healing modalities in the world. Alessandro has more than 34 years of experience in the healing world and has well over 10,000 hours of mastery throughout his career. He integrates science into spiritual, developing a remarkable, scientifically precise, intuitive skill set and pioneering the latest and greatest spiritual science discoveries that continuously shatter the limits of what's possible. So what I'm pretty much telling you is he is a unique spiritual teacher who not only can help us relate to big spiritual concepts, but has an ability to use scientific proof to back it up. Now, this all sounds real good on paper, right? Let me tell you, I've experienced this for myself, and at a time I was very cautious about what I was bringing into my and Nash's life. I can tell you, it's one of the best, most life upgrading things I've ever done. So I'm going to take you on a behind the scenes look of a little convo we had together catching up. Ladies and gentlemen, Alessandro.
Well, hello.
Oh, hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I like your setup.
Thank you. I knew you'd have a mic and all this nonsense.
The pluses of owning your own recording studio.
My God, I know. I knew when I said it, I was like, he'll have all this shit. He'll know.
Yeah. It's funny when I talk to people who own like different things they host, teachers and stuff like that. The presidents, they always see my setup and they're like, "What are you running off of? You got some good stuff over there."
You do. It's like you've done this before.
Once.
Oh my gosh. So it's been a hot second.
Mm-hmm.
How are you?
I'm good. Just rolling with the world that is rolling out.
Yeah. The dumpster fire after dumpster fire. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And it's funny because I've been talking about this for years, and now people were like, "Oh, nothing's going to happen, blah, blah, blah." And it's just like worse and worse.
No.
Like every day, like the news is like a year's worth of news every day.
I know. There was something I was looking back at when I was trying to think of like the top things I wanted to cover today.
Uh-huh.
And I was looking back through like just notes and like other classes and like things like even before COVID. And you were like, yeah, there's something coming up, and you were like starting to give things and you're like, I'm looking into it. And we're all just like, whatever, like, sure. Like we're taking it all in. And then we're like, oh shit. Like, really, it's right. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. In the next stuff, I'm like, oh no, if that happens, I've got like my generator and stuff now.
You sound like my dad. My dad like preps, like he's super intuitive or something. I don't know.
Good for him. Your mom, I remember a few years ago, your mom set me up. I was like, so what kind of stuff you got for like if there's no food?
Oh.
and then she like set me on all these supplements and stuff. It was great. She was like, you can live off of this stuff. I'm like, okay, I'm in.
Yeah, she's the best person for that stuff. But I'm so glad we get to talk, even though it's been forever for us. I feel like I did a little intro before we got on. And I do feel like you're like a family member. And you probably feel like one for the parts that you've been through and you know my
Oh my
family.
God. You have
And
the understatement of the century.
so it's like it's not even like I was like, I feel like you're just like an older brother, but also like just a fan, like I don't even know. You know everybody. Like you know all the characters in the story, my
I
story.
know. It's hilarious.
Yes. And so, and now more recently, obviously, working together this way, but also with all the stuff with Nash. And so before, because that's my biggest, and there's so much that we could cover. And in the previous episodes that I've recorded already, they were just me kind of telling the story. And you for
Uh-huh.
sure have come up with them already. So people that are hearing this episode have already heard about you and know of you and how we got kind of started and how I found you and then those first couple like sessions we had after Bob died. And so that was just like ever since then you've been such a big part of this process and this
And
up
who
leveling.
like, so you need to buy a mic. You need to get your recording studio together. Who said that?
I remember when I got this mic that I'm using right now in these headphones, you kind of laughed at me because I got so excited that I just went and did it. And you're like, oh, okay. So you just went. It was like literally we had one conversation that was like 3 years ago, maybe even more than that. And you're like, yeah, you're for sure going to do this, this, and this. I'm like, cool. And I bought all the stuff. And then it sat there for like however long until more recently. But I was just like, oh my gosh, you're just a big piece of all this. So I was like, I just had to have you be
Mm,
a part of this. So thank you for
I'm
being.
excited. I'm excited. I have never laughed so much with a person before. I mean, especially in like sessions and things like that. The you remind me, speaking of family, you remind me of how I grew up. Like my family was nuts, and every time I chat with you, it brings me back to my family is crazy in our
Yes.
story. And like my mom, one of the funniest stories we had as a kid was the youngest brother took, the Costco Sam's tub of butter, like the 2 pound butters.
Yes.
He It is witching hour one night, went and greased a whole hallway, the walls, the railings, the stairs, the floors, everything.
Stop.
Yeah, well, my sister comes walking out first thing in the morning and like her feet go above her head. She's on her back. She's trying to grab the wall for support. It's all
Oh my
buttered.
God.
And he's like, I don't know, not even 2 years old.
Oh
so
my gosh. He
so
he wasn't
Nash
even 2 years old.
No. So now she's just bringing me back to all this stuff, and I'm like trying to keep a straight, focused intuition and everything that you're needing during your sessions. And I'm like, oh my God, I know it. I know what she's doing.
Oh my God. When you were telling that story just now, I pictured him like a teenager. I was not picturing
Oh
a 2 year
no,
old.
no, 2 year old he ruined my parents' bed one day. Like he took one of the Costco size thing of eggs and he's smashing eggs all over their bed.
Oh
like my mom would come home from work. She
my God.
being a nurse,
Mhm.
she'd come home every morning and what am I gonna find? And one day he's all covered in white. He decided to paint himself in whipped cream. Like
Like, is this one of those things you're saying your brother, but it's really you? Like, are
Oh,
these your stories
I
about you?
have good stories, but my brother's stories reminding me of you and Nash. Like seeing you do a video and then get hit back upside the head with a stuffed
Oh,
animal and
yeah.
then just going, "Yep, this is normal. Let's keep rolling."
That's right. So you have seen it all. I remember even the stories that you would tell me when I was first single parenting, which is, I was talking about this in an episode, and I really don't know anything different because Nash was 15 months old. So I really don't know what it's like to parent with anyone. So just whatever. But I remember telling you a thing that you're like, oh my gosh. And you would laugh, but I'm like, it's not funny. I'm like, he's
Oh,
crazy. I'm like, he's like on the outside of the door screaming and throwing things at me. He's like tricking me. He's throwing, like, I'm like, I can't handle it. And you were just laughing. This is
oh,
why.
he was brilliant though. Like
Oh,
he talk about know your enemy. Like he knew that he could make up some stuff about ghosts and then you wouldn't be able to use your timeout place anymore. Like talk about the level of brilliance. You were
oh,
done.
oh, I was, and I have been done. And he's on this new level um, of comprehension, like five. I remember everyone saying like five is like super magical. Like I remember you even being like,
Yeah.
just wait, just get to five. because even though there's different things, it's different. And I totally, on his fifth birthday, it was like overnight. I was like, oh my gosh, he's like a fucking cherub. Like, who is this? Who is this? I didn't know I birthed this thing. And then the thing with five, though, he's almost six. The thing with five is at the end part here, he turns six next month. It's a different sort of developmental stage and smartness.
Oh yeah, negotiation stage.
Yes, the negotiation and the using some of my tactics against me.
Well,
And
I hate to break it to you, he's been doing that for a long time.
that's true. That's
Couldn't
true.
see that one coming with intuition.
I know. So you told me, you've warned me on all the stages, and this is
Oh,
the one.
look, my perfect sum up your situation is the picture where he's lining up the big dinosaur, giving all the commands to the lower underlings. I was like, she's
Yes.
done. I was like, talk about the foreshadowing. All she's done.
Oh my gosh, you did. You're just like, we just now need to make sure he uses his powers for good. That's our job
Yeah.
now.
Uh
So that's what I've been working on. But
huh.
you have been so helpful with all of this, not only because of who you are and how you do things, but you're also a dad. So you
Oh
know
yeah.
this world like nobody's business. So you've used some of these tools where some of these I'm using for the first time. So
I mean,
that,
look, I will say mine was a cakewalk compared to yours. I mean,
yeah,
one
sounds
I have
like
a
it.
girl, you have a boy. That's just different right there.
Uh-huh. You're right. You're right.
And then she's dialed in. I got lucky where I started the relationship with her where it used to frustrate other people. They go, well, we all know if dad says to do it, she's going to do it right away. And like, she's not going to put up a fight. Like, all I have to do is once, hey, would you mind doing this? Done. Like, she doesn't even hesitate, not in 5 minutes, not in 15 minutes, right then and there. So I have to be really careful what I ask for because
You get
I don't
it.
want to be like, I don't want to ruin it.
Well, that's like the thing that I thought was really fascinating when we started working together, besides all the things, was intuition. And obviously, doing the courses, the classes, and the teacher training with you, and just sessions. That's a huge part of anything, any of us. That's kind of like with the foundation, right? It's just understanding intuition and just get that under your belt, and everything else kind of opens up. So you taught me a lot about that in general and figuring out. And I found that people think it's like this superpower, right? That like only certain people have it. And I think what's really fascinating, and you do an amazing job of explaining it, is that it is something all of us have. And it's just something that with time and practice, and which takes it for me took quite a bit of practice to just use it and like get used to that it is always there, and how much easier life is once we kind of grasp that and absorb it, as we all have that superpower. So will you explain a little bit in your amazing way of intuition for people that are like, just think of it as a superpower and think that's something they don't have access to?
So it's all it's how we're designed and built. As you start to get down to the science of how our bodies work, how the earth works, and we have had evidence, I would say since the 1950s, I've seen studies all over the place that are these machines that inventors come up with, that they're doing what our intuition just naturally can do. And the basics of it is it is at our core. Everybody has it. And to be honest, at this point in my conscious awakening and awareness, I think it is the key to the world becoming something better than what it is. Because when you start living your life by intuition, as you know, everything changes.
Mm-hmm.
So with that in mind, it's not reserved for the few, because I know one of the things that you were looking to bring up today was the soul path, soul pull.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a very, very personal journey. And for every person who jumps on and really gets into that journey, you are the only one who knows how it turns out. Not a single other person on the planet can tell you how you're supposed to live your journey. There are pitfalls, there are falls, the failures, there are things you got to push through where other people will go, quit, quit right now, walk away. And you, something inside you is going to tell you to push through. I mean, if you go through the stories of all the greats on the planet, they overcame insurmountable odds that, like speech impediments and not being able to speak at all, and then becoming a famous public speaker, things like that. The one area where they were deficient in ends up becoming their strength and ends up creating them strong. So the thing with intuition is, if you have this plan to carry out what your soul set out to do in this lifetime, that the thing that you were supposed to be the first to change the world by. So if you think of like Charles Darwin or Einstein or Thomas Edison, they all had this thing inside them that was unique, that only they could do. I mean, Thomas Edison, he failed 10,000 times and kept on going with trying to design the filament of the light bulb. And that's what it takes on a soul pole career. It is sort of like the whole combination of your life. Now, going back to it, though, it being such a very specific path, if you do not have your intuition engaged, it is impossible, because with the latest studies and then our intuitive science that we have, like take, for example, social media, it is 68% influential over our decisions and our actions. And that is like science fact. So that means if you just see people who like a certain type of animal, you're going to go, I need to get one of those animals. And you're going to think it's your own idea. So this idea of intuition, there are so many things pulling us in all these directions. If we all didn't have it, there would be no way a soul could go, hey, I'm going to come into this physical life. I'm going to create this. I'm going to do this for humanity. I'm going to raise the consciousness through this idea. And if we were born without intuition, that would be absolutely possible, especially this day and age, with all of the things that influence us, emotions, or over being in the same room with somebody, you have over a 60% influence happening to you over your emotions. So if they're rooted to a heavy negative emotion, you could be having a fantastic day. But what's going to happen is you're going to be swayed 60%. So there are all these things affecting us, and it would be impossible to achieve anything. We would be living out other people's desires and dreams. And unfortunately, a lot of people are. But with intuition, you can figure out what is my right path, and knowing the failures are not failures, they're preparations. And it is the only way a soul could do something amazing in this life. So going back to your question, we are built to read light. Our cells are composed of light. Matter is composed of light. Everything goes back to light and photons. And then with the combination of forces and other things at play, we start to get shape of matter. But you could talk to the world's leading scientists, and you can ask them to explain light, and they will tell you the more the concentration of light, the more the information. And every single thing on this planet, the byproduct of light. So we have these photons that turn into matter, and then all light will have byproducts of either forces or electricity. And what they've figured out in the 1950s is that the electricity that light gives off, kind of like in our brains a bit, there's information in there, and we feel it on a very deep level. So take mother's intuition, for example. Almost all women who have not gone through some thing that cuts off their body and keeps them from tapping into their gifts, they know when things are going to happen. They know if there's going to be a problem with the kid at school today. They know in the middle of something that something's going on. What's actually happening is we are built from light. We understand light because our bodies have to decode light. It's how it's built. The latest neuroscience, when we have a thought, it happens in the form of light and electricity, and our body is decoding that. Our body is deciding, okay, these parts of the brain we don't need anymore. Fourth grade math and all this, burn those down, melt them down into gold, and let's build those over here, because now we're studying building toilets for the revolution. Great, we need our resources over there. And so the body always has understood light. And then funny enough is you start to develop intuition. What you will find out, what science will reveal in some time, is that our physical bodies are actually built exactly from the light bodies. So think of the light body, the spirit self, soul self. It is light in its purest form, and it is giving off these forces, electricity being one of them. That's where we get the electromagnetic field from. It's giving off these instructions which tell the physical cells, grow this way, take this shape. And if, say, for example, there's trauma with the spirit self, it's going to show up in the light body is a dimmer light. And then that dimmer light is going to be the instructions for matter and cells. And it's not coincidental that where the dark light is in the spirit self ends up being heart problems, because it's in the same exact area. So my point is, we are built to read light, and light and electricity, same thing. Our body knows how to read the electric impulses that go through the neural pathways and down through our system. Our body reads it naturally. So we can do the same thing. I've always said, as it is within, it is without. And just because we can read it internally, our subconscious brain, they've estimated it to be 10,000 times more powerful than the conscious brain. It understands light. It is reading stuff all over the place. And people have these moments of intuition, of getting it right, nailing it in really important moments of their life. But there's too many people out there who are disconnected and go, oh, it's not a real thing. It wasn't a real thing because nobody has developed it into a scientifically precise method. And that was one of the things we did at Guided Light Healing, was go, let's turn this into a scientifically precise instrument. And then everyone has to have it, because whenever I've sat down with well over 10,000 private clients at this point, every single one of them has a very special purpose in this lifetime. It would be impossible for their soul to do it if they didn't have intuition. So I've scanned so many people. I've seen hundreds of thousands of people. I've yet to meet one without intuition. Now, the one thing I will say, everyone's intuitive gifts are different. Some people have it through sight. Some people have it through hearing, some through feeling, some through knowing. Mine started out as a knowing as a kid, and I didn't know what it was. I just knew things. I had information without channeling it and things like that. Other people can channel, other people can read bodies. This is where you get like medical intuitives, if they're really good at what they do. Things like that. Like, we're just reading the forces around light and reading light. You can open up your gifts that you can actually see the light body. You can see what's going on. And what you will always see, and this is what science had started studying in the 50s, was they would pick up a very specific electric measurement in an area of the body, and then they would look at the physical and go, well, there's nothing there. Sure, 6 months later, it would be cancer or something like that. So we've known this for a long time, but our technology it's not advanced enough to do what our intuition can do. I mean, I can do in 30 seconds what would take 50 tests at a hospital, and we don't even have the technology to test certain things. Like, I knew exactly what COVID was, how it worked, and what it was going to do before anybody had information on it. And I wasn't doing anything special. I was just reading the light of it, and I could see what parts of it were what and how it was going to affect people. What were the problems with the anything surrounding it? It's just about reading light, and our bodies do it. Our subconscious brains do it, and we can make it a conscious activity. So it would be an impossible thing that a person didn't have intuition. It's just, it goes back to that whole thing of being gifted is more of a crutch than it is a thing that's going to help you. I think it was Darwin had a cousin who was a brilliant genius, and he ended up doing nothing with his life. And then when Charles Darwin talked about himself, he was like, I'm just an ordinary person and I'm very persistent. Every genius, Einstein, all these people, all they've ever said is, I'm just very persistent. I won't take a fail as a no. Where a genius, they'll be great. They may get it right for 50 tries in a row, but their first fail, everything about them is broken. They don't get back up, and then they change directions. So I would say that the idea of somebody who's going to do something great, the world kind of has it backwards. But it all starts with intuition. Any person who has designed, changed the world for the better in beautiful ways, it was done intuitively. People who've made financial fortunes, the most famous people on the planet for that, from we'll say Warren Buffett, his fortune all came from intuition. And you talk to these people in private, they'll go, yeah, but don't tell anyone about it. If they knew I was making decisions off of my gut, I'd be out of business. It is this thing that has just been kept from the masses because it would just bring about too much competition. So, like I said, it goes back to it is our nature. And if you ask me, in 100 years from now, hopefully sooner, every single person at the age of 5 and by the age of 9 will have remarkable intuition. They will get 100% of their information right, and they will live their life according to what their intuition says, not what parents, not what teachers, not with other people who are trying to live vicariously through will do. So that argument on a person could not have intuition, it's just impossible based on what I've seen in my years of doing this.
Well, that's a pretty magical response.
Okay.
That pretty much covered it. So you nailed it. Okay. So that's intuition in a nutshell, in a very
um,
big nutshell.
the one problem I would say with intuition and why people the other big hurdle to overcome is that it's a little bit better for most people than a coin toss.
Mhm.
And I would say that's the other thing that has kept people away from it. And that is completely false. It's going back to if you have any kind of gift, you don't get good at it until you fail a lot with it. You don't get good at it until you know how it works under pressure. You're not good and predictable with it until you know where your weak spots and you overcome that stuff. So I would say for all of you guys out there, you can be naturally gifted, but it's not an overnight process. In order to be good at anything, you have to put time into it. Now, we can get people in 2 months at 90% accuracy, but the second it becomes an emotional decision of having to leave a job or move somewhere, something you've been doing for 20 years, your intuition's out the window. That's the stuff you have to earn the right to do. You can intuit what food you should eat and when to brush your teeth and things like that. But if you want to get to the higher levels of using it, it takes schooling, it takes practice, and it takes knowing yourself inside and out and through and through. So that would be the other thing I would mention about it, which you know.
Yeah. Yes. And I've gotten like like you said, it's such a process, and you get like, I think the first couple of classes that I did through guided light healing was, I was like, oh my gosh, I was so like, I feel like I was like sweating because I was like, I don't know what intuition is or how to use it. I'm not psychic. Like I remember thinking all of these things and like being like, am I just going to make something up? I'm not hearing anything. And so, and then with time, you kind of learn that I think of it like spidey senses. And it's like you almost teach us how to kind of slow everything else down so you actually can pick up on what you're getting information on. Because it really is just right there for you. Like right now, I could ask a question and see like 10 things that give me the answer. Where before, you expect it to be some like, I don't know, voice that someone just tells you the answer. And that's not how
Oh
it
yeah,
always is.
the God voice from
Yeah,
above.
the Wizard
You're
of
like, I'm not
Oz.
hearing it because that's not
Yes.
how it sounds.
Right, exactly. And so,
It's a pin. What was the saying I used to use? It's a pin drop in a heavy metal concert.
oh,
That's what intuition
exactly.
is.
It is. And the thing that's so fascinating to me is once I learned, and you get to teach other people that too, it's like, oh my gosh, like it's almost like it's this like freedom and like this weight lifted off your shoulders that you don't have to have the answers yourself, that you actually, they're just really given to you. And that's what is like so freeing about intuition. And when we can get people to understand that, um, it's just life changing. So but the
It's so true.
emotion thing, you're totally right. That's the thing that you can have the best intuition, even like in sessions with other people. And then when it comes to your own stuff and it's highly emotional, like things for a while, I had to really practice with Nash, like because he's my thing, or like relationships that have to do with triggers that directly trigger things about me. I'm like, oh, I thought I healed all that shit. Oh, now I'm getting an opportunity to work through it in real time. Cool. This is the tough part. Like, this is the work. So it
And
is.
that's what I'm talking about right there. It's not expecting it to always be right. It's going,
Mhm.
great. What is going to give me the next level of access to intuition? So it's going to go. I had a really funny story with intuition just in the past few years where I was cooking. I was so proud of myself. I do woodworking. I've got this amazing shop, and I'm like, my OCD like thrives in that environment. Well, anyway, I've got these cooking knives and I've got these Japanese sharpening stones. Like I use intuition for everything to find the best of the best. So I have the best stones in the world for my planes and for my kitchen knives. So I decide one day I was like, I'm gonna do all my kitchen knives right and proper. And I do, and sure enough, it's like you can like just have something a vegetable look at it and it like cuts in half. That's how sharp it is, right? So one day I'm a little distracted. Something's going on. It's always chaotic over here at points, and I'm cutting lettuce, and sure enough, the knife worked so good it went right through my finger and took like half of my finger off at the nail. Right, so a huge part. My panic goes to level 10 right away. What am I gonna do with the stub? Like this is not gonna grow back, and I'm panicking over there. And this was all my years of working on intuition coming it all together. Right away, it was like the human side would have been like, go to a hospital. Sat down for a second. I just got still for a second. And with my emotional, like this was a level 10 for me. I always say everything's on a 1 to 10. And the goal in life is to be able to intuit during a level 10. So I'd cut off this piece of my finger. And then I'm like, I have to get this sewed on. Like, what do I have to do? Like, I was just playing the stories. And then I was like, all right, let me figure out what to do right now. Stop the bleeding, number one, just by pinching it off. And then I was like, I heard, and I knew this before, but I heard super glue it, you'll fix it later. Stop the bleeding, you won't need stitches. And then literally, I kid you not, my intuition was dead on with all of it. Within a few weeks, it was almost 100% healed. Everything was grown back that was cut off. And it was like more than a quarter of an inch of chopping off. And like people were blown away. They're like, there's no way you cut a part of your finger off a few weeks ago. And I was able to regenerate, regrow it, and have it like it never happened. But I would have made the mistake of going to a hospital, getting stitches or something, and then it would have been scarred for life. And not saying that's the solve for everything, but for me in that instant, I was terrified, and my intuition got me through that. And that's what we practice for. And that's what we, like you were just talking about, we look for these moments. Oh, great. I get to play. I get to get it wrong so that I can get it right when it really matters. And
Well,
you've been doing that well. Or
oh
wait a
gosh.
minute, Nash has been coaching you well
Yes.
on good intuition.
Yes, I've thought a lot of times I'm like, here, I thought I was put here to be his teacher. And I was like, I got this all backwards. Like he was put here to be my teacher. I'm not teaching him shit. So, but what you said, and you brought up COVID and you brought up the intuition and like this aspect of it and like doctors and all the things. And I remember when I had COVID last year, we
Oh
had a
yeah,
session and it was like I was in the thick of it and it was really bad. And we had a session and the part that I thought was really another level of my understanding of all of this is it was very clear. And you said, it's not just energetic. And that's not what healers do, right? We're not just like, don't ever do anything physical. Just think about it in your head. And that's the end.
mm.
And you were like, this is, and you've taught this way before this, but as you mentioned, you have to hear things so many times before they start to stick.
You have
And
to experience it before it sticks.
there you go. And so I was experiencing it in real time. And I learned a lot from that little period of time when I had COVID. And you had said this release, the energetic is what releases the physical option or the physical opportunity or the experience or the solution and or the add on to what you're already working on. And that I saw for myself. And like you just said, like you still use something physical, right? You use super glue, but
Yeah.
you had to slow yourself down long enough to get to what was going to be the best for you. And that is a real big thing with intuition, right? With anything, with
That's exactly right. And that's where I'm always careful to say people when they ask, what's the right modality? Western medicine does one thing very well. If you cut off a limb, they can reattach it and they can have it work. Like they are great for things like that. But for anything that is not an instant needing a solution,
Mhm.
they're not as good with cancers. A lot of times the cancer treatments kill the body before it actually kills the cancer. So one of the things that I was lucky enough at a young age is to realize everybody does something right. Why not put all of it together in one place?
Mhm.
And if you do that, you end up with like a super thing, which is great. Like you can look all around the countries right now in the world. Some countries have like almost zero pollution. Some countries have zero waste. That's one of the big ones that I've seen. Like countries with technology have achieved an almost, I think, a 98% zero waste level, and then other countries have done other amazing things. I'm like, why don't we just take the best that each country has done and put it all together? Why is it this? It's
Right.
you're only going to get this right, and everything else is going to suck. And that's sort of what our medicine in the United States has been is they
Yeah.
weren't open for a long time. Even herbs, I mean, doctors would scoff at you and basically throw you out of the office if you brought up herbs. And now the doctors all got their own name brand herbs in their practices. I mean, it's just it's that.
I, I know it's, and the thing that kept coming up that you had also said during that time, it was like a year ago, you had said, I had a supplement and I was like dealing with COVID, I was dealing with a lot of anxiety and like panic, which isn't my MO. It's not like how I operate. That's not a thing I would say I, deal with. So it was very different for me. And so I was like, what do I do? Like, I know the energetic piece, but is there something in the meantime while I'm doing the work to move through why this is going on that would help? And you intuitively picked up on a supplement and you mentioned it. And I was like, that sounds so familiar. I was like, let me go look. And I looked in my cabinet and I had it already. And it was like a perfect example. And you were like, see, you're like, you had to get like the understanding of what this is showing you before it would release the physical solution. And I already
That
had it.
is exactly right.
Mhm.
The things will be right in front of our faces, but we cannot see it until we get the lesson behind it. And that's the big thing. And this is the thing that I years later have learned as a teacher to really emphasize. I don't think I did this as much years ago, and highlighted the fact and this is a lot of sort of the misinformation in the spiritual world is that you can be a Zen master and make anything you want happen. But if that were the case, if you could literally just sit there in a high frequency meditative state, whatever you want to call it, and make things happen, you would not be in this realm. You would be in the fifth realm where stuff like that happens. You are in a physical body with an energetic self. We are 50-50. And what that means is all energetic setting, your creator field, all those things of setting the right opportunity to come in, they need physical action. I talk about it is like you could have this massive amount of water, like a massive lake or an ocean, and you may just dump it and it's going to go everywhere. If the goal is to generate energy from that water, you got to have a dig out in the land that it can flow through and be a channel or a river so that it can turn the turbines. It needs to be channeled, and that's not going to just appear. You have to design, you have to hire workers, you have to figure out how long, you have to figure out at what strategic points the electric turbines that are going to generate electricity. You have to actually physically do things. And this is what the spiritual world has gotten wrong is they're going just be in the energetic, just be in the manifesting, just visualize and pretend and it'll come. And with everything we know, the science of spiritual and the science of energy now, it's a 50-50. You have to have physical action. You have to have the avenues for the energy you built to actually flow. And that's something that years ago, I wish I emphasized a lot more for people because today, whenever I see a person who's like, I'm going to meditate away my sickness, I'm like, it's not going to work that way. Like, it's you got to do
Yeah,
the physical things, but the physical things won't appear until you
right.
have the energetic components right. And that's exactly what you perfectly described. So,
That makes sense because that also has been helpful with emotions. The more I work on mastering those bitches.
Oh,
They to sit there because sometimes you have to get yourself calm enough, right? Where you do not get yourself calm enough to get the answer or to think clear to be like, what is even my solution to bring the emotion down so then I can actually get to what actually is going on. That is like I don't know. People think like this is the work. Like this is when people say like work. Like this is the stuff that is like it's tough when you start to implement it in your own life.
oh, forget it. I mean, emotions are the biggest hurdle. Emotions are in the way of mastery of
Mhm.
anything.
Agreed.
They wreck intuition.
Oh,
They wreck our lives.
they do.
And and check this out. Scientifically, I studied neuroscience for years. They shut off 95% of the blood flow to the decision making part of the brain. What do you expect to accomplish when your brain is off?
Oh,
Essentially, it's down to like a drool when you most need it. So mastering emotions, yeah, it's important. Otherwise, when you're dealing with a smart kid like yours, he's gonna win.
oh, every time, every time. And now he's just the emotion. And then you know it's happening at the same time, but you're like, I know I'm like at a 9 right now. You talked about the 0 to 10. And when you clock it, I'm like, I'm at a 9 right now, but I'm so emotional. I'm just going to see it through and I'm going to make terrible choices. And I'm going to keep going. But you know, you have the awareness to know it's happening. So I guess that's a step up. But it is. There are moments that I'm like, gosh, I feel like I've come so far, yet emotions can just so quickly make humble you with this
Ugh.
growth and spiritualness.
They are the hardest thing to overcome. And this is in the past years, I've had a lot of time being I would say the height of my gifts. I mean, I'm doing things that I never thought even possible in my lifetime. And my intuitive scientific exploration into all this stuff is just at a level I wasn't able to do 10 years ago. And one of the things that I now explain to people is so that you can kind of gauge where you're at. What'll happen is when we talk about reflections, when we talk about soul lessons,
Mhm.
a soul lesson is you've got your story. I mean, people are hearing your soul lesson, and they tend to start around 6, 7, 8, 9 years old, and then they come back every turn of the wheel, and they're a little bit louder and a little bit bigger. Now, the thing I've picked up in later years, which is a beautiful understanding of it, is you may have mastered your emotions, but there's a whole chart that you're unaware of. So you may have mastered your emotions at a level 1. Okay. And when you get to a 99% mastery at a level 1, guess what? You go up to level 2, and guess what? Your mastery goes back down to 2. So now you're starting over again. So people don't aren't aware of that. You actually have to go through 10 levels of mastery. And every time you go up a level, people get defeated when talking about scientifically precise intuition. They check their numbers and they're like, I was at a 96 mastery. Why am I back down to like a 12? And they didn't know that there's this whole repeating. You have to get to a 10 before you actually earn the right to have it all the time. So like for you right now, you probably don't want to hear this, but you're like at a level 7. So you're at your 7, which is close to
Damn
your
it.
10. But you're you're like an 88 at a level 7. So what's going to happen is you're very close. You're like 2 or 3 more situations where you get to that 95 plus mastery, and then it's going to reset. Then something else bigger will come in, and through the level 8s take you from a 25 back up to a 95. And that is how the soul expands, grows. And each time you pass one of those levels, that's what gets embedded into our light, our consciousness, and our spirit brain, our higher self brain. And that's actually how we grow. But that was something that I wasn't able to articulate years ago, is these levels is we go through it. And the setbacks that we think we are having, they're not setbacks. They're just you're at your next level and now you're a rookie again.
That that is very that makes a lot of sense. And when I started realizing that more recently, I think it was more recently that I was like, wait a minute, what is going on? Like I am like, but it's a different sort of setback feeling. Like even though it feels like you're like, oh, I'm all the way back where I started, it really isn't. Like you really aren't, but it feels like that. And it's something that I found that when I try to explain to people, there's a big thing that a lot of people have said, like, how do you trust a single person again? Like I've gotten that a lot. And honestly, when I explain it to people, I'm like, from the moment that that happened, it's like I rebuilt the foundation. So I actually never have had trust issues since then. I had more trust issues before any of this even happened. So it's like I try to explain that you do come so far that you really don't ever go all the way. You don't ever go all the way back once you've crossed that
No,
threshold. And if people could be easier on themselves and understand and just give yourself some grace that really once you've gone through something, you really haven't gone all the way back, even though it kind of
it's
feels like it.
true. It, that's the thing that I find people, why most people don't recover from the necessary falls and fails, is because they think they're at ground zero. But this is where intuition is remarkable, because you can see, man, it looks like I'm back at zero, but you're actually at 75% towards the finish line. And this is just a major fall, but you're almost there. I mean, you've got two more big fails and then boom, you're through. You've crossed over the finish line. And that's the difference. Human beings quit all the time. The world is, I would say, 90% of people who settle, probably higher than that.
Mhm.
And they settle because running a race blindfolded and just hearing keep going and not being able to see a finish line, it's very tough, and intuition can let us do that. And that has saved me from a lot of moments of going, I got nothing left in me, I can't go any further with this, and then intuitively looking in and going, you're just about there. You're a day away. Why would you quit right now? But
Mhm.
most people do. It's our
Yeah.
human nature is we want to we want to sit on the couch.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing that's helped me the most is even though knowing a lot of these things, it is hard to access it while you're working through those levels, right? And
Oh
so,
yeah.
like, knowing your team and your people that you can reach out to that can kind of help tap in for you when you're kind of, you have the blinders on is super. That's the thing that I feel like has always like pulled me, to the next level, like reaching out to you and like Val and like other people in the program because it's just you just see it differently. Just like how you can see your best friend should break up with her boyfriend, but she can't see it. It's because you're on the outside. So that to me has also been really helpful to get to
That's
the
so
next.
profound what you said though, because I think a lot of studying beings, spiritual beings, get this idea that they should throw away everyone. That's not the recipe for the most successful people on the planet. They had a team of 6, 7, 8 people on a console that they could be told that's a terrible idea or try this. They conferred with other people that they trusted in. And I think that's a mistake I see a lot in the spiritual world is people are going, great, I don't need to go anyone for answers anymore. Uh, what I do is I go, great, I'm going to try and get my answer on the own on its own. But after I get it, there is a degree of uncertainty because maybe I'm playing at a new level. And then what I'm going to go do is I'm going to have my go-to person or somebody who specializes in this. And I'm going to go, what do you get on this? And my goal is to go, did I get what they got? Because I know I'm emotional, but a lot of beings cut that out. And I think they hurt themselves because they, depending on a dark force issue, their intuition's not working anymore. They just end up forever getting lost in the dark. So I would say
Mhm.
that is one of my most important pieces of advice is having at least 3, 4, 5 people who you implicitly trust, who give good advice, who have gifts like you do, who are equals, who they will help you in those moments. You shouldn't have to do it on your own.
Yeah, it's life changing to not feel like you have to do it alone because sometimes it feels very isolating, right? When we start picking up all these tools.
Just a bit.
Just a little bit. That's why I explained the school when the episode that I brought it up in as like a spiritual X-Men school.
Oh yeah,
And it was like
definitely.
once we all got together, it's like, oh my gosh, we're all weirdos together. This is great.
Nobody's crazy anymore.
No, that's what I said. I was like, I all of a sudden didn't feel so like out of place anymore. And so
It's
it's life changing when you kind of figure that out.
oh yeah,
But
when you find your soul family, it's
mhm.
there's blood family doesn't even hold a candle to that, even though they're
No,
great.
yeah, I know when people say blood is thicker than water, I'm like, I don't even know that that saying really like resonates. And I'm like, I don't know what the new one is, but I don't know that that's it. So that's
Soul connection is
yeah, soul connection
something something.
is the new thing.
Yeah.
Well, with the time that we have left, I had
Mhm.
texted you before this session or before our little interview here, and I was like, "Hey, these are the things I want to talk about, but I just put Nash to bed.
Oh yeah, I can't
And
wait to hear this. I haven't heard this
he,
yet. So,
yeah, you haven't heard this yet. And you have been my go-to. And I kind of feel like you kind of have helped me single parent Nash. Like you've kind of
oh,
been
you
that
crushed
check-in.
it. I mean,
It's,
I know you've told everyone you have the craziest kid stories I've ever heard, and I laugh every single time. I'm like,
I know.
like I save your sessions specially to go back and listen to one day because I'm like, I'm channeling half of the information
Oh
coming
my
out for you
gosh.
all the time. I'm like, I would have never even thought to channel this. Like, this is gold.
Oh my
So
gosh.
anyway,
Yes. And so he has been, this has just been a journey, right? And very unique in our story. And so it's been, I remember from the beginning, I was really concerned when Nash would get to an age where he'd start asking me about Bob and asking more specific questions and where he'd actually notice that his dad physically wasn't here. And I remember thinking the beginning would be the hardest. And you helped me. And there was a session we had, and we talked about um, the pizza slices. And we've
hmm
talked about this in class and ever since then. But this session was the first time I heard it from you. And it was like life changing. And I talk about it being like literally overnight after that, like my heart never went back to that place that it was in when we had that session. And it was this feeling of like emptiness for Nash, right? This, that he's
mm
missing something, and that's
mm
something that I can't replace, right? Something that regardless of what life looks like, I can't ever replace this. And you explained the pizza slices concept. And
hmm
that was like life changing. And I've explained it in bits and pieces. And I know it's kind of like a bigger conversation, but with the understanding of knowing that we're never without. And you gave me these tools and this awareness and consciousness of how to explain that to Nash, right? How to let him see that, for me to see that, and to see how this was supposed to play out. And this is why this is, and where these pieces are being found. And where it's evolving to now, because he was 15 months when Bob died, and now he's almost 6.
hmm
And where it is now is we're at the concept of he gets those things, right? Because I this has been like parroting, right? I have been talking to him about this since day one.
You're in trouble. Continue.
Yes. So, with the understanding that his awareness is he knows that his dad is not physically here, but that he
hmm
can talk to him and he can feel him, and that he can ask him things, and that he gets to be someone who has his dad with him
All the
24/7.
time. Yeah.
Right. Where I don't get to have my dad around 24/7. And
Yep.
the conversation tonight where he brought it up was our dog Alvin. And you and I had a session when Alvin died too, because that was really tough.
Right.
And that was about a year ago. And Nash was aware of that more so than he was when Bob died, because when Alvin died, Nash was about 4, almost 4.
Gotcha.
So to him, when we bring up Alvin, that is his understanding of like loss and death to him. So he gets almost more emotional when we talk about Alvin than we do about his dad. So tonight he was saying something and he brought up Alvin, and he has a picture of Alvin in his room. And so I was like, "Oh, do you want the picture?" And so he brought the picture, and he was talking about it for a minute. And the idea for Alvin, what I explained to him, was that all of his body parts stopped working at once because he
hmm
was really old. I explained over time, our soul gets tired. Our soul doesn't match our body, our physical body. And so it was
hmm
time for him to go. And I said, all of his, because with kids, we have to be like really careful, because the one thing you say, they like take it and run with it.
Well, they'll latch onto it forever. So
Yes. So I knew if I said,
it's like when you're like, oh, damn it. And then the kids run around, damn it.
yes, yes. So I knew I had to be very dramatic and say not just like one body part wasn't working. It was like all of the body parts after 100 years stopped working.
hmm
And so what he says to me now, because he understands that, is he was getting emotional and he was like, well, I just really miss him. I miss him and my dad. And why did all their body parts have to stop working? And I said, well, when our body parts stop working, our soul leaves our body. And that's when our heart stops. And he goes, well, what do you mean a soul? And I was like, well, a soul, which we've talked about this, but he's like, so you can see it like a ghost? And I was like, no. I was like, well, and then I was like getting in my own head, and I'm like, well, I guess depending on what your abilities are. But I'm like so abstract. So I'm like, well, it's a soul. You can't see it, but you could feel it. And I said, and it leaves the body when your heart stops. He's like, so what does it look like when your heart stops? And I was like, everything just stop. I'm like, just stop asking questions. go to bed. But he was very emotional, and it was like this. I was having to give him answers. And so where the conversation went is he was trying to understand what a soul is and when it leaves the body, if it's like a ghost. And I
Uh-huh.
said, that's what you feel when you talk to your dad, or when you feel him in your heart and you talk to him or you ask a question. That's the soul that you feel, a piece of that. And he's like, so is it buried somewhere? And so it was really hard for him. So what the question, and not really a question, but the idea is that for his brain developmentally, he's very curious, but developmentally, it's like hard for him to grasp and give him the right verbiage to like sink into it. And
Mm-hmm.
his latest thing with that being something that he's trying to understand is that even though I tell him that he's around and he's there all the time,
Mm-hmm.
he said he doesn't like that he can't physically see him. And he
Mm-hmm.
doesn't think that that's fair. And he's tired of having to talk to him and feel him around
Mm-hmm.
instead of being able to see him and have him
Mm-hmm.
use an example of like throw him on the couch. And
Mm-hmm.
but there's people in his life that do that. So then I go
Mm-hmm.
into, well, this person does that for you and this person does that for you. He's like, yeah, but it's not my dad. And I was like, well, what do you think a dad does? And then he got very, we wrote a letter and I said, tell me what you would want him to do with you if he was here. Like, what's a dad do? And we
Mm-hmm.
wrote down things. One of them was walk on the ceiling. I was like, okay, well, you're setting me up here. But he listed things that him and Bob never did together.
Right.
So they were they're it's this dad idea and he's attaching Bob to it. And where I think you'll be helpful is that he's will forever miss him if he thinks that that person has to be Bob. Like if he hasn't
Okay.
allowed someone else, right, to see that those pieces are all around.
Mm-hmm.
And so to help him grasp that concept, which with an adult we can much easier, to help them see that when you feel this, and that's a piece of it, that's a piece of him actually here
Mm-hmm.
through this person. But he
Mm-hmm.
looks at me like that's just like way over the top of his head.
Okay.
So that's where I'm at with him, where
I
he's
got a good
emotional.
I got a
Okay.
good piece to add into this great work you're doing.
Okay. Maybe. I don't know if I'm doing it right, but
He needs to be connected to, this is where, again, where intuitive parenting, it is where we start before we have kids. What, and as a parent, I don't know if you'll go through this. I don't think you will with Nash. I'm already intuitively hearing you won't. But my daughter is a lot like I was Aquarius growing up, and she can look cool, calm, and collected on the outside, but on the inside, it could be like atomic bombs going off, and you'll never know.
mm-hmm.
So you got to play mind reader a lot, especially when they don't have the communication skills, when they can't express their emotions, or even worse, identify what their emotion is.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to be able to intuit as a parent and figure out what things are really important to Nash that he does with people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What you'll do is you'll use your intuition and go, is this dad role? Is this dad role? Is this dad role? And you'll find the things that he talks about, that he's excited about, that he won't let go of, that he remembers. And then you go, great. If you were to have this dad piece, he would be busy because he's got to work at the house and all these other things. So you'll get this less, but you'll never get this experience anymore because your dad has to hold it, but your dad also has to work a lot and you're only going to see him maybe an hour or so a day. So do you want to give up this thing you've talked about like 50 times? You said it's amazing. And he'll go, wait, I have to lose that to have this. He is not, from what you're telling me and what I'm looking at, he is not connected yet to what he's actually losing. He doesn't have a specific example. So say something with your dad. I always say, you hold some of the dad pieces. You could even do this. You could find out which dad pieces you play for Nash, whether it's conversations and things like that he values and loves, and go, honey, if your dad was here, we wouldn't be able to do this anymore. Would you miss it? Yeah, I would. You want to give it up like that? I mean, he's really smart. He's just not making the connection. So you have to get really specific to dad pieces, not only the dad pieces, but the ones he thinks about and loves that are coming from your dad, that are coming from you. And you got to bring those up and go, do you like this part of our relationship? Do you enjoy our conversations? Me reading to you at bedtime? What if that had to stop? And then let him think about that for a minute. And how would you feel? I would be sad. Great. Well, your dad would do it sometimes, but not as much as I would, because he would have to work and help and do all these things here, and get him to see that his favorite parts about his life right now, the things he tells his friends, he would lose for the dad role that may not be around because they can't. They have responsibilities and things like that. And grandpa has less responsibilities because he's earned the right to be at this stage of his life. He can be more engaged. If your dad was around, he'd be distracted by stress at work, by what his coworkers are getting him mad with, stealing his lunch, make it funny, whatever. And he's going to come home and he's going to go, I love that sandwich and it was gone and it's going to ruin everything. And instead of being able to connect with you like I can, your father's going to half listen to you. Are you okay with that? And all the whole time going, giving up this piece to have this piece. Once he can make those connections, he's going to start to understand things that are important to him. And that's where the whole pizza slice thing starts to come in and becomes real, because you're right. As a concept right now, he can't really understand it. But if he knows that his time with grandpa or his special time with you or going to parks or whatever it is you guys are doing these days would be gone, and he would do different things with his dad, but these are his favorite things right now. Does he really want to give those up? I think that is going to bring a level of clarity to him of going, I get it now. He's not connecting to a pizza slice thing because he's not connected to the stories he values. He's hearing dad pieces, but they're pieces he doesn't really care about. You need his specific stories.
That makes a lot of sense. And the intuitive piece, like you're saying, comes in for me actually picking the right things. Because if I pick something
Yeah.
and he's like, actually, I would rather do that with
Yeah.
him.
So especially with Nash, like you can't pick a level 2 importance. Like you better dial in a 95 level importance to him. Otherwise,
Right.
like
Yeah.
he'll flip your ship.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. I could see it. That's what I visually saw, was like me going to him with something and him being like, actually, I don't want to do that with you. I do
Yep.
want to do it with
Yep.
him.
Yep. He's like,
Yeah.
he's like, I'm buzzing you out, woman.
I almost feel like sometimes that he's like watching me to be like, I'm going to see what she does. I'm going to see if she's got it yet. Oh, she doesn't have it yet. I'm going to keep going.
But set him up. Don't even let it, because he'll pick up on where you're going with this. Go,
Yeah.
you really love this story. Would you give up this story for anything in the world? Like bait him into a few rounds of like, how much really you really care about this much. You would never give this up. You would give up pizza before you gave this up. Like bait him into it a bunch, make him defend it, and then go, you realize this would be gone in an instant if your ever-present dad was in physical form, not here at work right now.
Mm-hmm.
And make him, he'll be able to wrap his brain around that. I can feel it, and that will be his, oh, I don't know if I want to give up that relationship pizza slice. I don't know if I want to give up that one. That's kind of my favorite thing.
Mm-hmm.
If you can make him question that, you got him on this. 7 years old, I don't know, but right now.
Yes. I know, it's what people don't understand. It's so, I use the word like tough, and I guess tough is a good word for parenting this way in the beginning stages, like up until they're like 7-ish, because we talk about their intuition is like just on fire. Like it's just so, there'll be times I'm like emotional about something, like just a level where I just can't get the answer. And I'll be like, Nash, should we do this or that? And he'll like flat, I'm like, cool, let's go do that. Like they just pick up, but it is a unique way to parent that most people don't have the tools to do that. And it feels like a lot of people see it as like I think from an ego standpoint of you're letting the kid run
Oh,
the
yeah.
house and this and that. And you're like, that's, it's taken time to articulate how that's not what's happening, but people think that.
You're developing a CEO or something like that. You are making him comfortable with making choices and seeing the consequences of his choices.
Mm-hmm.
Most kids don't get that till they're 25, 26 years old, and they make very bad choices at that time. Now you're developing his intuition. He's getting to play out and see how things go. Decisions he likes either going really well, or decisions he picked not go well. And that's on him. Mom let me do it. And that kind of responsibility is going to keep him from making bad choices with friends when he's 16, 17, where all my crazy stories are. It's going to make him make the right choices with with whatever psychedelics and things are out
Oh
there
my
later
gosh.
on. Like people don't understand that, and we've talked about this before. It is much better to fall going 2.5 miles an hour than it is at 35 miles an hour. There are real consequences as an adult when we're moving fast and we make a mistake, when they could have learned at Nash's age, just like he has the opportunity right now to be empowered and to be assertive and to see the before and afters that he chooses.
Hmm.
And kids don't get, parents are scared to do it, and they're playing off of, well, my parents do it for me, so it must not be right. Like, everyone's afraid nowadays. This is my one big thing with the world right now. Everything that comes from our parents to us is outdated technology. If you think about it, it is outdated ways of thinking things. Just like 120 years ago, they thought thunder in the sky meant the gods were angry at us. They are all outdated. Everything that we get should be improved. That is our role as kids, is to take what our parents know and make it better. But the world's not set up that way, and it doesn't do that. But that is the opportunity that Nash has, is he's getting your understandings, but you're going, be better, find a better solution, make this faster. And one of the intuition, making choices, we didn't have those things until, I mean, I got lucky. I think it was around 15 or so where I started getting that, but it's still late compared to my daughter, your son.
Hmm.
It's they're gonna blow us out of the water
I
by like
know.
24.
They're
It's
gonna
crazy.
we're creating monsters. We've
Oh
joked about
yeah,
that. We're
they
creating
better
these
take over the
monsters.
world.
We're putting in enough work, so they
Yeah.
should. But that's also with like I find a big one with kids and parents, or parents with their kids, is eating, like intuitive eating.
Oh,
I can't tell you how many times I've got it, just it physically feels uncomfortable to me the way that food is approached with
oh.
kids, and how they think they should eat or not eat, or eat all the things or don't eat this. And it's, I'm still figuring out, again, as I'm evolving, how to work through it in real time, and then like take notes and figure out how to articulate that to
Well,
other people.
look at it this way again: falling at 2.5 miles an hour at 35. Better they hurt their teeth now, or they hurt their teeth when they're 25. Like, let them OD on candy one night and have a stomach ache and their teeth hurt, and for 4 days, and go, honey, you remember what that was from? Yeah, I ate too much candy. Oh, interesting. And
Mhm.
things like that, or going, I want extra macaroni and cheese, and them finding out, you intuitively knowing, maybe they're, and kids won't make this mistake, but because they're intuitive, unless a parent
Mhm.
has destroyed their intuition, maybe they'll make those bad choices.
Right.
But even if you intuitively knew your kid was lactose intolerant, it still needs to be their choice to stop eating cheese.
Mhm.
You need to go, this, what the stomach ache is from. From the broccoli? No. From the macaroni and cheese? Yeah, I think so. Do you want to
Mhm.
eat it again? No. Versus every day, what do you want to eat? Mac and cheese. What do you want to eat? Mac and cheese. No, you can't have it. And then being the
Yeah.
bad person forever.
Right. Exactly. Or the one that says you have to eat everything that's on. That's a really tough one for me. Um, the putting We put the food on their plate, and then
Uh-huh.
we sit down and we say you can't get up until you finish it.
Oh,
That to me,
jeez.
it's like,
Overeating.
yes, and it's like showing someone that when you feel like you don't want to eat, that you actually have to, no matter how you feel.
Yep.
And then I've heard people say, well, then they just don't want to eat healthy food, and they'll just eat a tiny bit of something and then leave. Or, and then I thought, well, the next stage of that is then, well, there isn't anything else. So this is your option. And if you don't want to eat it, that's what I do with Nash. I give him food, and I try and let him choose how much goes on his plate. Cause that's,
Uh-huh.
I mean, I can't tell, like, it's not for me to decide. But then if he doesn't want to eat it, or there isn't anything on there, then I'm like, okay, then sometimes I'm like, well, then that's all we're having, but you don't have to eat it if you're not hungry. Like,
Yeah,
I'm not
exactly.
making 50 things for you, but that's kind of where I start to play with it. But it is a tough thing, because then he'll go to the pantry and he has these like organic like bars he likes, and he'll eat like four of them. And there's like a point where I'll have to be like, oh, so we're having another one. And then I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna, just so you know, I'm not buying them until next week. So if you run out of them, but then I'm like,
Good,
then you
good.
sit here and you're like,
Or just go, honey, what's your plan when you run out? Because we won't have any more for 6 days. Do you want to keep going? Let him make that choice and then let him go for 4 days. I want these, I want these, I want these. There's an opportunity for him to teach himself moderation.
right?
It's great.
See, but like we have to do the clumsy parts first of being like cringing as parents and
Oh
being like,
yeah.
I know that he's eating
But
20 bars.
let him ruin his baby teeth. That's great. Let him get a stomach ache now. It's fine.
Yes, exactly. I agree. I agree. What would be before because we're pretty much done here,
Uh-huh.
before we go, the food thing. So if a kid has a plate of food in front of them, and would in your Alessandro way of teaching, what would be like in a perfect world, how someone would handle that?
The
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 food, like you've given your
the,
kid
the
food
eating
and
thing.
yeah, and then they're sitting at the table, everyone's eating. They either don't like what's on their plate, or they're not hungry, or they don't want that, and they're just talking about dessert or something.
I would I think the first thing is it's got to be their choice if they
Mhm.
don't feel like they got to choose it. So I would go, what things? I would be sneaky. I'd be like, okay, look at everything on the table. You see it all? What's that? What's that? What's that? Great, I see it all. Of these things, would you like to pick two things or three things? Pick two numbers that you're good with.
Mhm.
Okay. Would you
Yeah.
like to pick two things or three things from this table to put on your plate? I'm going to take two. There's this really fascinating psychology thing that as long as you give somebody at least two to three choices, they won't reject it. They'll stay within bounds of the adults do this all the time. So it works amazing on kids.
Mhm.
So I'd go, great. So do you want to choose two things or three things from all of the things you just said? Two. Okay. What two would you like? And just being fine with whatever it is. So you just got to make sure that whatever it is semi balanced, like a
Mhm.
veggie that tastes delicious or a meat side, whatever it is. Their intuition's probably going to pick what they need anyway. It's
Mhm.
scary how they know if they're missing vitamins and what meats where parents don't know what the hell's going on.
Yeah.
So I would do that first. And then I would go, great. I'll be like, how much do you want of that? And if he wants one little spoonful, then let him have that. Let him pick that. And it's even better to give him less and him want more than him have a lot and quit.
Mhm.
So it's sort of like having him want to get a second scoop is going to convince him in his head that he likes it. And the next time it's on the table, he's going to reach for it anyway. So you're
Mhm.
like kind of programming, brainwashing that way. Everything I do is brainwashing.
Right.
So,
Exactly.
so doing that. And then in the days that they don't want anything, again, let the food run out that they would go to. And then when there's nothing left, go, all right, honey, let me reheat this on the stove and make a thing out of it. Go, do you want to reheat it with butter or do you want to reheat it with oil? And do we want to reheat it here or there? Like make it into a little thing
Mhm.
and then go, great. Same thing. Let them choose what they want to reheat. So if they're not going to eat right now, let them overeat, run out of their other stuff, and then there are no other choices right now, honey. So in life, we got to make the best with what we have, and I know you're going to pick the right thing. So encourage them,
Mhm. Mhm.
and that's what I would do. And I would go, as a parent, I would go, fine, I'm happy to reheat it in 30 minutes or in an hour, whatever it is, and just don't microwave.
Yeah. Mine is a spice rack. I don't even.
Oh, yeah, yeah, that's what it is. Mine's a fancy clock in my timer sometimes, but but uh, that's what I would do with that. If they feel like they get to choose all the time and they choose their proportions, and it's fine if they're eating small meals every 30 minutes or hour, it might drive a parent a little crazy, but it's
Yes.
better for their bodies and their metabolism and things like that. Small meals when they're hungry, that's intuitive eating. But
Mhm.
overeating for the next 6 hours because you don't want to look at food again, it's not as healthy for us.
Yeah.
So,
Or using it as a reward, I find. Finish everything on your plate,
yeah.
and then even if you're full, but you don't get you to get dessert.
Yeah,
And that
and
to me is like a tough.
so here's where the intuitive parenting comes in, and I would go, how on a level of hungry, how hungry is he right now? He's at a 2. Oh my gosh, he's right. I would start to check inside and go on a level of needing this food on a level of 1 to 10. Where is it? 2. Oh gosh. And then really starting to see his logic and where his intuition's right and where he's just not making the right brain logic connections, and he'll learn the lesson a bit later when he's hungry and there's no snacks left because he ate them all in a couple days. He's learning moderation, and he's going, maybe so I don't get this hungry again, maybe food will help, and help him make them connections. Go, do you think if you ate earlier, your stomach could hurt right now? No. Oh, that's smart. Okay, I'm cool with that.
Mhm.
Again, indulge him and sort of play those areas. The best thing that I can always say, he has to want. And most parents don't give their kids the opportunity to want. But here's the cool thing. You do this for a week, Marlo, you've corrected this. You've seen
Mhm.
this so many times you've corrected some Nash catastrophe, and a week
Yes,
later it's on to the next one, and that one is gone. So he
that's very
corrects
true.
quick, he evolves quick. So as a parent, we're looking at 10 days tops. 21 times to 20, 20 times, 40 times to set a habit, but
Mhm.
after 40, he'll have it forever. So that's the way we
Yeah.
gotta kind of look at it.
Yeah, that we can't ever mess them up too bad. We always can flip it.
Always.
We always
Oh,
can figure it out.
oh, you don't like that, honey? Fucking
Oh.
drop the ball.
We're gonna start over. I'm gonna put you to bed and we're gonna do this over again
Yeah,
tomorrow.
yeah. And
Yes.
and and the thing as a parent too, it's you don't need to get it right in one time. You
Yeah.
you can take a lot of times to get it right. And realistically, as a parent, I don't know if I've talked to you. I'm sure I've mentioned this before, but as a parent, you got to do it 40 times before you actually start to get it. So this thing we're talking about right now with portion control and getting kids to eat, it's going to take you 40 times before you get good at this. It,
Mhm.
it it will be at least 20 before it even feels like it's fluid and like you're not some robot trying to explain something to your kid, and your kid's like, "Why are you talking like that?"
I actually hear that from Nash. He says that to somebody. He's like, "Why are you talking like that?" He's like, "Is this
See?
your upset voice?" But I'm not upset. But he can tell in the way
Oh,
that I talk now.
he's scary dialed
It
in.
really
Like
is.
you have met a match like no other parent on the planet.
That he is definitely a unique. I just call him the Nash. It's all I can explain him as the Nash.
I
But
have all the stories of when he was younger.
I know I kind of
What am
forget. You
I
know how
building?
you forget because so much happens. It's like when women have babies and they forget the delivery and they end up having more because you're like, why did I do that again? Oh, I forgot. It's like that's what happens. It's like I forget what I went like all of that process.
Oh yeah, no, I remember all the good
You have
ones. I mean,
recordings of
and
it.
then like I said, I've got a whole Marlowe archive just for me to review. Like on that day, I have a son. I'm
Uh-huh.
like, all right, what were all the things that came up, so I will never have
Yes.
to deal with.
It'll be that parenting book that you write.
Oh, you have
I'll be
no
so glad
idea.
if I can be like in the front, you'll have like,
Oh,
thank you to Nash.
inspired by Marlowe and Nash.
Oh my gosh. Well, Al, this has been a pleasure, like always.
Congratulations on
Thank
getting this
you.
up. I'm so
Thank
proud of
you.
you and
Ah,
happy for you.
it's
And
been
I'm
a
glad
long
you're.
time.
Uh,
Yeah.
but you're the most ready I've ever seen you. I mean,
Yeah.
how you articulate this stuff, how you've connected the dots. You are the right person now to change the lives that I know you're already changing, and all the ones who are going to find you. It's You're right where you need to be. So I'm glad it didn't happen a few years ago because
Yeah.
your articulation and understanding of the spiritual world is way different. It's rooted. It's speaking from knowledge and having lived it versus, oh, I've been taught this and let me parrot
Yeah.
it back, which I think is most spiritual teachers' problems.
Yeah. Well, that means a lot coming from you because you definitely have been a huge catalyst for where Nash and I are, where I am, how I even like got on this path. I know I had to actually do the work, but you definitely facilitated and were in my corner. So thank you.
Well, it was in your soul blood. I mean,
Yeah.
and the one day your mom asked the question and she got me to look in, I was like, teacher, it like knew right away. So in that process of turning into the soul is the most important process we can all go through, stripping away all the garbage that we get from teachers and parents and becoming our true self. You're the closest I've ever seen you, and you are the type of people we need to teach and give their stories. So this is really cool to see it all come together this way.
Yay. Yay to Soul Fam. So thank you
Mhm.
for all the things.
My pleasure. And it has been amazing. And I know it's going to continue to be a ride.
There'll always be something. So there'll always be something. So I'm sure the next time around, there'll be a new thing I need help with as Nash evolves and as
uh,
it continues.
I
So
can't wait. I'm eagerly
yeah.
anticipating. So
So don't go far. Don't go hiding on me because I'm sure I'll come and find you.
noted.
Oh, perfect. And then I'm going to put in the notes how people can reach you and find you,
Cool.
the website, all of that fun stuff. Um, and yeah, and obviously I can help, but I'm just so glad people get to actually hear your voice and know that you're real and you do exist and they get to hear your ways
She
of doing
channeled me the
things.
whole time.
Yeah, you
I'm
didn't
just
say
an
any of
actor
that.
standing in. You
That's how
might.
powerful I am now,
Uh
huh?
huh.
Well, thank you, Al. And until next time, my next Nash story, I'll talk to you soon.
My pleasure. And I can't wait.
Okay. Good night.
Bye.
Thanks so much for being here. Please rate, like, share, and review so we can stay connected and continue this magical journey together.